guess I'm pretty unique here in the sense that I worked for all my journalistic career in a place which is antiquated as far as journalism is concerned. The idea of contacting people over the internet would be sheer madness. You'd be putting people at enormous risk, even to talk to some sources on the phone. Aside from people who are like official spokesmen or you're doing on the record stuff, but if you were really going for important material, it really had to be face-to-face contact. So really old-fashioned, and so I really don't know how much I can contribute to the online computer side of this discussion, except that, you know, I would file my stories to the Sunday Tribune or the Irish Times, less so, but certainly Sunday Tribune by internet. I would keep records encrypted on the computer, but otherwise the idea of using it for sort of normal contact would be madness, and I'd never do it. Far too dangerous. And, you know, the other aspect about working in Northern Ireland during the Troubles was that you had, it was like a war zone in miniature. Every single participant in the war was within easy reach, in a sense, that they were all there. It wasn't as if they were coming from foreign countries. They were all literally down the street or within 5 or 10 minute drive. And so you know, they were all, some of them at least, were very computer literate. You had to be very aware of that. You had 3 intelligence agencies which were all using computers and internet, etc. And would be very literate in that regard. You had the British Army's intelligence outfits, which went under various names. You had the IUC Special Branch, which was the people who were really in charge of the intelligence war there, and then you had MI5, which had sort of oversight role. All of them were hot shit as far as that sort of stuff was concerned, and so you just instinctively stayed away from it. So it was old-fashioned journalism, and that meant face-to-face contact and building up trust. And necessarily what that meant at the end of the day was that it took a long, long time to establish yourself as someone who people would trust and talk to. It's a very small society as well, which didn't help. And it was really only in the latter stages of my journalistic career in Belfast that I suppose I began to really hit some important stories. And one of the reasons for that was that through no effort by myself, I was put into a position where I had to actually demonstrate to the world, if you like, that I would not betray sources. I had interviewed a loyalist character who was involved in the UDA's assassination squads in North Belfast. He was the quartermaster of this particular unit. In other words, he stored weapons for the unit and supplied them to the gunmen when they needed them. And he had supplied the weapons that were used to kill the lawyer Patrick Finucane, who you may remember. He was assassinated in his home. He was a very important lawyer as far as the Republican movement was concerned. He did an awful lot of their work. The reasons for his assassination, I think, have yet really to be fully established. I have my own theories about them, which at some point I hope to share. But to put it this way, I got in touch with this character who told me his story. And we agreed that his circumstances were such that if he went public with it at that point in time, his life would be in danger. So we agreed that I would not write about it until such time as I got the go-ahead from him. And 9 years later, during the inquiry led by one of the English detectives that were routinely sent over to clear up the shit in Northern Ireland, he was arrested and charged with the murder of Pat Finucane. In fact, of course, he had been working for the Special Branch. He had told them beforehand. He didn't know who the target was going to be, but he said, it's a big hit coming up, and they're asking for this gun and that gun. So they were well aware of who had the guns and what the guns were likely to be used for, and there was enough information there to intercept the operation to kill Pat Finucane, and of course that did not happen. And afterwards, of course, they knew precisely who was involved, because the guns were returned to him immediately, and he passed that information on to his handlers. They could have arrested the assassins of Pat Finucane while they still had the weaponry, incidentally, the weapons that were used to kill Pat. They didn't do so, and he had all of these aspects of the story, which clearly raised very deep, fundamental questions about the behaviour of the RUC Special Branch and whether they had actually been complicit in the murder of Pat Finucane. So when he was arrested and charged with the murder, that was the signal to me. I cleared it with his lawyer, and we went public in Sunday Tribune that weekend. And the following week, Scotland Yard appeared at my door with a subpoena seeking the material, and I refused to hand it over. And we went into a protracted legal fight, which ended up, thankfully, with us beating Scotland Yard and preventing the material being handed over. And because I had taken that stand, I think that demonstrated to a lot of people who may have had doubts. And when you're working in Northern Ireland, everyone has doubts about you of one sort or another, because you can't be perfectly acceptable to everyone involved in that type of conflict. So there are always questions. And I think that answered a lot of questions about whether or not I was trustworthy. And from there on, it became much easier for me to do the sort of work which I went on to do, which is to write, for example, the book about what happened inside the IRA during the peace process. And also when it came to setting up the Boston College oral history archives, which incidentally were also not just about Republicans, but they were about lawyers. And there's a whole section of the archive there which is devoted to the Ulster Volunteer Force, which was, next to the IRA, responsible for most of the deaths in Northern Ireland. A very important organisation, and that's a very valuable archive which we were collecting. And I think because of that, people like the UVF, who normally would be very, very leery of me, given that I was a Catholic myself, or at least had an Irish name, and wrote about the IRA and stuff like that, they were quite happy to cooperate, and we built up quite an impressive archive. It's a very different journalistic story than perhaps some of you maybe want to hear about today. It's old-fashioned, if you like, but it was something that it was an approach to journalism that was necessary, and really was the only way to cover the story.